Hey everyone, welcome to another Breadcrumbs webinar. So glad that you could all join today. And even happier that we have Kenny Lee, VP Revenue Marketing at Seismic, joining us today. Excited for a couple of reasons. Kenny is an expert in what he does. I got a preview of the deck, so the content looks exciting to me. Hopefully that means it's exciting to you. And in addition to that, Kenny's a fellow Torontonian like me. So we got a hometown in common. That's it, Kenny. Kenny, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Gary, thanks for having me on the your webinar. I'm super excited to be here. Just absolutely love working with fellow Canadians as well. So excited to get going.
Awesome. So Kenny, listen, I'm going to be here the whole time. I'm going to be listening intently. Towards the end, we've saved a little bit of time to answer questions that the audience may have. I'm sure I'll have some of my own. For those of you listening, please feel free to throw them in the chat. I'll be monitoring them as we go along. But without further ado, Kenny, I'll throw it off to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Gary. So hi, everyone. Happy Thursday. The topic that I wanted to chat about today was saying no to more pipeline, which I know it sounds crazy, and say yes to better go-to-market alignment. But before I jump in and share my story, this is almost like when you go to YouTube and you want to see the content you want to see, but then there's that 10-second ad that comes in. I want to share that I work at Seismic. We are the global leader in sales enablement, and we help mid and large size organizations enable go-to-market teams, help them actually engage customers and drive revenue growth. And the way that we do this is through our Seismic Enablement Cloud. And really that actually helps companies drive better outcomes like go-to-market or operational efficiency, better enablement, as well as improving speed to market. And we've done this for 2,200 plus customers. We have 1 million plus people, sales and marketing professionals coming to our platform every day, trying to basically grow their business. And we've been doing this for a while, since 2010. So now you can click the skip ad and go to the next slide, which I'll share a little bit about who I am. So as Gary mentioned, I'm from Toronto originally. I've been here though in the US for the last 20 plus years. Still just a green card, still debating whether or not I should be a US citizen or not, but I've got 25 plus years of marketing experience. And as all of you on the call know, there are many different shades of marketers. My background or shade of marketing is really in 3 core areas. Field and integrated campaign marketing, classic product marketing, and then for the last several years, modern demand generation. And I've done that for several different audience types, mostly to B2B, like B2B, mid-market enterprise has been my wheelhouse, but I've also done developer and partner marketing as well. And I've done that for several different companies. Started my career at Adobe Systems in Toronto, Canada, eventually grew to lead and run marketing for Adobe in Canada. And then you can see several different companies I've been at since that time at Adobe. And I spent about 15 years at Adobe. I will say those were my formative years of really just understanding the core fundamentals of marketing. And what you'll see is I've done that in several different companies, from social finance. I was there super early. I built the demand gen function at Lithium. I ran marketing for a small Series B startup called Revenate, which was in the travel tech space, and ran all of marketing there. Did my social media stint at Twitter. And that was quite an experience doing developer marketing and trying to build a demand gen function at Twitter. And then consulting at Segment. And then my last couple of work experiences was at Zendesk and Seismic. What I'll share with all of you in all of these different companies I've been at is every company is at different stages and levels of their maturity curve in terms of marketing and demand generation. And one of the things I often observed is that big companies like Adobe or Twitter or Zendesk. They've got great, powerful brands behind them, and that creates a lot of good tailwind. But the thing that I learned the most probably was working in smaller companies that didn't have brand recognition, didn't have a name out there. You really have to figure out, okay, how do you actually hack growth? How do you find opportunities to be efficient? Dollars are limited, so in many ways, I've done a lot of headwind marketing. I'll talk a bit about that. Last quick thing about me, because life isn't about work alone, and you've got to find ways to recharge. Just wanted to share a bit of my background in terms of what I like to do. Maybe I work too much, but probably the top left corner is what I do a lot. Maybe not so much, but definitely enjoy a good cocktail or two. And then good food. You can't, have good cocktails and food without a lot of exercise. So just getting out there, hiking, adventure travel speaks to my soul. And I've been to a lot of places like the top middle picture is my trek to Everest Base Camp. Been to the top of Kilimanjaro as well as Machu Picchu. And so this is my partner, Elizabeth. This is just a bit about me. So, all right. Let me provide a bit of a disclaimer. So again, most of what I'm going to talk about is in the realm of B2B SaaS, typically mid-market enterprise. I will say that, every marketer gets a lot of advice, a lot of great articles and content. And I always say, your mileage might vary. What worked for one person in one company, and even what worked for me in one company, doesn't actually always apply to the next company, right? Every situation is different. What I've really learned is that after 25 years of marketing, this is still a journey for me. It's still basically an ongoing experience of learning, hacking, meeting others, like me, getting inspiration from, just different marketers with different backgrounds. And the last thing I want to share is that the story I'm about to share is just one part of one story, in a company I was at. And while there was a lot of great learnings, there was also failure. And I wouldn't say failure, but just, a failure to launch perhaps. And I think you'll understand more of what that means when I go through it. But let me share that. All right. So things overheard at the water cooler. Ooh, this is actually a bill. Let me go. So what I'm going to say is here, I'm going to empathize a lot with everybody I know we're all under a lot of pressure to build pipeline for our teams. I think the last 10 years have been great as a go-to-market team, whether you were in marketing, you were an SDR, BDR, or in sales, or even customer success, right? We've had 10 plus years of, low interest rates, a lot of tailwind marketing, the fish were biting, and everyone was in a buying mood. But I think that for the first time in a long time, as interest rates went up, the post-COVID bump, started to go away. It's been pretty challenging. And for those of you who are around since 2008, when you first saw that great financial crisis, it kind of feels the same way. It's what I call we went from going from tailwinds to headwinds. And, when I talk to a lot of my marketing community, and I do that a lot because you don't always have all the answers, right? You also want to understand what are other people going through. I ask them, hey, how are you feeling? What's going on? What's happening at, in your organization today? And this is some of the feedback that I've heard from my marketing peers and counterparts at different places. So things like, can we run more campaigns and ads, right? How can we get more web demo requests, right? That's always a question of how do I make the phone ring more or just get more demand coming in, right? Also things like, where can we find quick wins or when are we going to see results, right? And depending on your sales cycle, a lot of these things can create a lot of pressure. The funny one in the bottom right is, hey, Chat GPT, how can I build more pipeline? And I had a good conversation with a friend about just about that. And so either way, I think you get a sense of just the challenges, the pressure, the friction that all these different go-to-market teams are in, trying to figure out how to sustain that growth that they had. And I'll be honest, in many cases, a lot of companies might might have realized, or that they're now realizing, that the things that they were doing before, right, aren't going to be the things that will help them moving forward, because the market conditions and environment have changed. So one of the vendors, or just one of the companies I love, reading, following, getting information from, is a company called Winning by Design. They're a great, go-to-market consulting firm, produces a lot of great work. They also have a great ABM practice. I attended really a marketing leaders event about a month and a half ago in San Francisco, where Winning by Design and Pavilion got a bunch of people together to talk about just, what's happening and how companies are shifting, their go-to-markets today. So this is just an example of some of the things I wanted to share of what I heard and saw. So what's not working: SDR inbound, AdWords, I won't go through the whole list, but you can see that these were the things that the team had brainstormed. And then to the right are some of the things that they talked about what was working. So doing more outbound, more ROI. None of us are surprised by that. Honest, I didn't put in better enablement. I didn't go that came up, but definitely better go-to-market enablement came up as well. But also things like partnerships, live activities, things like that. So all of these things are, I think, interesting. They're good to test. And I know that, all of you as, marketers and sales professionals and, SDR professionals and customer success professionals, you're trying to figure out, okay, like, where do I start? What do I do? And so I wanted to actually pivot to really just how I've actually taken the approach of really trying to understand, how do you actually look at how to hack your funnel, how to look at how do you actually help support building more pipeline or accelerating pipeline. So a couple of things that I always say is going back to the basics. And again, caveat, every company is at a different stage of their journey. Side note that I'll share is that one of the companies I was at previously, as an example, the objective was, hey, you guys are only focused on net new pipeline. Don't worry about pipeline acceleration or customer marketing, right? And other companies are, oh my gosh, wait a minute, like we're doing full funnel marketing, full life cycle marketing. So again, these are just different companies that are in different stages. And part of it, to me, is about going back to the basics and asking fundamental questions like, do I understand the mechanics of my business? It's one of the first questions that I always double check on or look at. So things like, how is our business transacted, right? Are we basically, are we enterprise licensing motion? Do we have a PLG motion? Do we have basically a land and expand model? Just how is our business transacted? And it's important to understand the business mechanics of that. Things like revenue complexion, average deal size, days to close. All these things are important because the pipeline that you might generate today in this quarter might not bear fruit for 1 or 2 or even 3 quarters out. So understanding what those sales cycles looks like are questions that you should be asking your revenue ops teams or your business analytics teams. And how does that differ by geo, segment, or vertical? And again, those are just data points to help you understand how to build your pipeline complexion. So once you have an understanding of that, then I ask questions like, is my marketing mapped to the customer journey? Or put another way, is my marketing mapped to how my customers discover, evaluate, learn, try, buy, use, adopt, and then advocate? And what you might find in your customer journey work there is you might not be the be-all, or you might not be the one that controls that entire customer journey. You might find that, and this is, really work through product marketing, you might find that a lot of your customers discover and learn through communities or partners or other things. So you really want to understand that customer journey and then understand how big your total addressable market is. If you have ICPs, and you might want to reevaluate those things. And then also ask questions like, what does the complexity of your sale look like? Are you single-threaded, multi-threaded? Example, is your solution a simple sale where one person makes that decision? Or is it multi-threaded where there is a buying team and you have practitioners and executives that you've got to win over, right? All of these things are really important to take into account as you think about how to build more pipeline. And then also things like customer versus prospect focus, right? Are you a land and expand PLG to, deepening penetration motion, or do you not have a PLG or trial solution? You are straight, we are committed, we are build partners, et cetera, et cetera. So these are the things that I think about. Why is that important in building your pipeline complexion and just support? You're always trying to figure out trade-offs between short-term versus long-term pipeline opportunities. And it's important to understand, that data to help you figure out your pipe gen strategies. The last pillar here that I'll share is just, does my go-to-market team know what winning pipeline and bookings looks like? So imagine you have 1 and 2, you've got that nailed down, you're building your campaigns and programs, you're seeing pipeline be created in the quarter that you have, for example, targets in, right? But your sales team is always coming back saying, wait a minute, I don't have enough pipeline this quarter to close or next quarter to close. And all the pipe that's being generated is being created 3 or 4 or 5 quarters out, right? That's a problem because your sales teams will always come and tell you and say, like, guys, I'm hungry. There's not enough pipeline next quarter, even though you're seeing I'm hitting my pipeline goals, right? A lot of times what I've seen in many companies is that if you don't track pipeline acceptance, pipeline acceleration, and pipe to bookings performance closely, as well as pipe flush out, you'll always be in this cycle of, wait a minute, I always need more pipeline. And you really want to understand, why is pipeline stagnating? Why is it being pushed out? Or why is it created with a close date so far out in future quarters? So looking at things like won loss pipe bookings analysis, once you actually have that, you want to look at, hey, if I have that, can I see when pipeline gets flushed out? What are the major reasons why? And can I get that data in a structured, scaled way so I can take action, versus the last conversation I had with my salesperson said that this is why they're actually not closing or whatnot. And then you want to look at really what is an important number for me is just, what is the pipeline coverage that's required to win? And, how consistent is that? You might have heard that, across many different companies, pipeline coverage is increasing, gone from 3, for example, to 5x. Well, that tells you how much pipeline that you need to reliably and responsibly convert into bookings, right? But a lot of companies don't track that, or a lot of marketers might not know what that looks like. And again, going back to the understanding of the mechanics of my business, you might see huge swings between expansion pipeline coverage and new business pipeline coverage. And then you as a marketing team have to decide and say, hey, for the limited dollars I have, where is it best to basically apply our strategies and efforts? And then you would have a conversation with your rev ops and business teams around what's more important, pipeline creation for future quarters or the business at hand. And again, every business is different. The thing you want to do is actually talk to your go-to-market teams to make sure you're all on the same page. So I know that's a lot. I want to give you a quick case study. And again, this is an example of a company I was at previously. I won't say which company, but I'll just give you the high level of the problem set and what we were trying to achieve. And then a methodology that I took, or our team took, to try to understand and really just better impact pipeline. So current problem, or the problem at that time, was that we had a great product, great solution, but it was really challenging to figure out how to deliver consistent, qualified pipeline that we could forecast pipe and bookings conversions in a very efficient way at scale. I'm sure all of you as marketers, because I'm going to assume that most of you are marketers on this call, know that, hey, look, if marketing is saying I'm hitting my pipeline targets, but sales is missing their bookings numbers, no one's giving each other high fives. No one's saying we did it, we crushed it. You kind of have to put that under, just quietly give each other a high five, right? But you'll see this. And like marketing pipeline, we hit our goals. SDR, BDRs might have hit their goals, but sales is missing their bookings. Or marketing is missing their pipeline goals. BDRs may have just missed it, but then sales is hitting their bookings numbers and things like that. So sometimes it's really hard to correlate pipeline creation and bookings performance, right, in the quarter that you have. And sometimes it depends on, again, back to my point, how long is your sales cycle? Is the pipeline that you're creating, this quarter, when does it drop in future quarters out? And is there enough coverage to actually, have sales reliably hit their numbers? But we saw things like inconsistent BDR to sales lead handoffs. We also saw that one of the big things was for our new business pipeline, there was a lot of fluctuations, 7 to 20x pipeline coverage needed to actually close business. And, that's not a sustainable model because you need a lot of pipeline to convert a small amount into bookings. And then you have to ask yourself, is that the most efficient place to invest dollars to drive the business? Or ask, hey, what's going on? Why do I need such a high pipeline coverage? And, how can we help, reduce that gap? So our goal was really, how do we actually get every team aligned so that we're all working together on a singular view of our demand funnel so that we can deliver consistent qualified opportunities, or that we're bringing opportunities that have a high chance of, converting, closing, and winning and staying or being sticky in the quarter that it was intended to close in. So that was our big challenge. And I'll tell you where we started. So this is a classic demand funnel, right? I know funnels are old. We can have a side conversation about, shifting off of, triangular funnels. But ultimately, you have a marketing team, inside sales team, and then you have a sales team. And marketing is working to drive MQLs or MQAs or 6QAs, depending on, if you're on a lead or account, world. A BDR or SDR accepts it, looks at it, inspects it, and then they work it to convert it to a stage 1 or early stage pipe opportunity. Sales works it into a close 1, right? What I found in, the company that I was at, when I looked at, hey, how is marketing measuring themselves and what is the definition of, a qualified leader opportunity? We used, 6 Sense as an example to help us track that. But what was interesting is when we handed those leads over to our inside sales teams, they were using BANT as a methodology. And then what was even more interesting was the sales teams were using a very common methodology called MEDPIC. And so when you looked at, oh, great, every quarter marketing was hitting their MQL goals based off of 6 Sense qualification. The SDRs were banting, those opportunities, finding their own opportunities, banting them. The sales teams accepted them, but they were using MEDPIC. And, we were still ending up with 7 to 20 pipe coverage ratios, hard to predict close 1 business. And a lot of the questions we had was, what does winning pipeline look like? We didn't really have a good sense of that. And so what we did was we said, look, we've got to figure out, what does winning pipeline look like? And then how do we start actually making sure that all upstream go-to-market teams are aligned to what that looks like? And so imagine a world where we figure out what winning pipeline looks like. How do we make sure that we actually bake that into the sales MEDPIC process? How do we make sure that our inside sales teams are aligned and can support filling in some of those qualifications for MEDPIC, right? Based on their capability and ability. And then how does marketing make sure that when they're going after their target audiences and everything else as they're qualifying, that some of those MEDPIC fields or some of those attributes are baked in? I jokingly say in this model, I want my sales pipeline born on third base. And we've got to figure out with the teams, how do we help them get there? So what we did really quickly was we basically we realized, look, we've got to get a consultant on board. We, outsourced the information of the research. And what we actually had to do was perform the research and review. Once we did that, get the research, validate that with all of our stakeholders around the world to validate that, hey, is this more of what you're seeing as winning pipeline or less? As we got the green light on some of those things, then we have to figure out, all right, how do we bake that into the current methodologies across the marketing teams, the SDR, BDR teams, and then sales with the support of revenue operations. And that's what I mean by negotiating the division of qualify, right? Can SDRs qualify budget? Maybe not, because we're we are more of a considered purchase. Or, hey, look, we are a commoditized service. They should be able to qualify that. But either way, the idea was to understand the negotiation and division of qualification, get commitments, then train and enable, and then launch the program. So I jokingly say this is the hard way, and this is what we did. So we hired this third-party consultant. They took every field in Salesforce. They went upstream, looked at our marketing data, and this is just for one motion. We looked at our new business motion. They brute forced, downloaded all of this data. They then looked at all of these key conditions, like what fields are converting, like what do the drop-down menus and fields look like when we have high conversion? What does it look like when you have low conversion? And how do you map those things together? They took all that data, put it into a scatter graph, did a big regression analysis, came up with a decision tree, and that's where we started to see patterns emerge of what winning versus not winning pipeline looked like. And that's where we were able to identify patterns for this business or for this business motion. So I know I'm going a little quickly here, but hope you're with me on this. The good news is we definitely got insights. And those insights, let me just give you a few examples. Like we learned that, for example, I'll go bottoms up on the sales side. We knew that when sales had a competitor in there, there was a much higher probability of close. Or when sales had a MEDPIC score of 14 plus based on that company's sales scoring methodology, we knew that that had a much higher uplift in converting. So we talked about how do we make sure that we enable our SDR teams to fill in some of those MEDPIC fields or move some of the MEDPIC scoring values earlier in the sales staging process so that we can identify winning pipeline earlier or flush out losing pipeline earlier and recycle them in another way. The SDR BDR side example, we learned that buying accounts have double the number of contacts engaging with campaigns. We also learned about key verticals, and there were other things in here that we learned, but a lot of the data helped move us to the rationale for an MQA model, also the need to prioritize our database enrichment to certain accounts. So a lot of changes could be made there to help us. And then on the marketing side, it was really interesting because we learned that a lot of the intent scoring that we were getting in terms of signals it correlated to pipeline, but it didn't always correlate to bookings. And we also identified that one accounts, for example, have 30% higher engagement rates across different channels. And this company at the time had a policy of, hey, once marketing creates pipeline or anybody creates pipeline and it goes into a pipe process, everybody back off, right? And I think that today, sales wants marketing's help to move people along that journey all the way through to bookings and candidly post-purchase into, customer usage and advocacy as well. So this is how we use that data to help us. Normally, marketing will share a slide of results, but I'm going to share my, story of lessons and learning here is that, this whole process, and again, caveat, every company is different. This was about a year of vision setting, collaboration, working with basically the, your field marketing teams, campaign teams, marketing analytics and operations, as well as revenue operations, and also key sales regions. And, we put the pitch together. We got buy-in and agreement from everybody. But like many companies, this was deemed a lower priority. And then I had actually left to join my current company, Seismic. And that's a little tell that, this story is not about Seismic. But I'll share that the silver lining in all of this is that the company, as it went through a lot of changes, they're now realizing that go-to-market alignment and asking a lot of these questions from, when I've chatted with some of my previous colleagues, this is the direction that they're moving in. So I know I've gone through a lot. It's 10:31. That's my presentation. Are there any questions from the audience?
Thanks so much, Kenny. That was awesome. Tons of interesting insights, experience, parts of that story that overlap with, my 20 plus years of experience as well. I think I'll throw some kind of big ones at you to start, and see how you react to this. So, the interesting part of the conclusion there, of that business case, or that case study, was that the business said there's other things that are more important, right? And I faced that challenge, when I'm in the seat, as the marketing leader. I face that challenge now as as the founder of a company that's designed to solve some of these problems. What could be more important?
That's how I felt as a demand gen marketer, Gary. It, you know, like my my take is that a lot of it is about silos, right? And
Right.
actually blame, like, I'm going to blame cheap interest rates and just say that the last 10 years was about harvesting demand, and so every channel, every team was aggregate, aggregate, aggregate. And I think that's part of it, but I found that projects like this require cross-functional team collaboration, and it's really hard, especially as companies get bigger and teams get larger. And I think that like, management sometimes are always looking for short, fast wins. Like, they want these little hacks, but I think often at times, you sometimes have to eat the frog and do the hard things first. Would be my perspective, Gary, on why that was. Like, there was a lot of support at the practitioner management level, and look, we had great executives, very seasoned pros, and there's other nuances, to probably what their priorities were, but
Right.
I agree with you. I think that it was very frustrating because as a full funnel marketer, you can see what was going on, and you're just trying to make the case. You're trying to build a vision to get people on board to help move in that direction.
Yeah, I hear you. And listen, this might be a segue into like another chat, more of a fireside chat type of conversation around that alone, right? Because I acknowledge, the higher up I got in an organization, obviously the more exposure I had to the breadth of things that are being thought about. But to this day, I hold this to be true in terms of like the fundamental growing of the business. A bunch of the stuff that you talked about is fundamental, and it hurts me when I hear people say, "Well, we have other projects that are a higher priority." I think people are missing the boat there. But I'll kind of jump between my questions and audience questions. Cassandra Anderson asks, are you still working with Winning by Design at Seismic? And what would you choose, spiced versus, or your opinion, I guess, on spiced versus MedPick?
Yeah. So I love that question, Cassandra. I'm like, you caught me. I'm a spiced fan. Like when I've never been able to I want to influence and drive a move to spiced, because I like, part of what I see a lot, and I've seen this at several companies, is that no decision or ghosting, right? When you've got a great stage one pipeline conversation, you see it in Salesforce, and then the salesperson says, like, they just ghosted me. I don't know what happened, right? That is also a rejection reason. And part of it, there's like, what is the compelling event or the activity that's actually going to drive action? And sometimes I think MedPick doesn't really capture that. So you don't know if this opportunity is a looky-loo or a looky-do, right?
Mm.
And I think spiced is a better model, but like, I'll be honest. If I talk to most marketers inside of companies, they're not even aware of what the sales methodology is. And when I join companies, I kind of ask and say, can you show me like what your sales methodology is and how is that actioned in Salesforce, right? Because otherwise that helps me understand, like, is this pipe real or not? And I kind of jokingly say, like everyone's creating pipe, but I don't see it converting, or why does it, why does it keep getting flushed out? And the joke I have is, are we running a pipe laundering factory? Like pipe goes in, some of it gets flushed out, but some of it keeps getting pushed out as well. And I think a model like Spice helps to solve for that. Would like to test that in one company one day.
Yeah, I do think a big part of it, Kenny, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is like it's largely a function on the maturity / skill set of the seller too, right? Like MedPick is very kind of easy to understand, straightforward. The framework itself is aligned to the outcome, which is what are the things that I need to know to close the sale. Whereas, Spice is much more a consultative sale. It's customer first. I agree. I think it's better. But it's also harder to have a sales force that's good at it.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I agree. And I think what's also hard is, I see a lot of companies, they'll change their sales methodology every 1 year or 2 years. Like today it's MedPick, tomorrow it's Spice. We're going to go back to Challenger now, or we're going to do value selling. And depending on the new CRO that comes in that, wants, she might want to change the model. I often feel like the best that marketing can do is understand it, figure out how we can support that, and influence at least getting data back in a structured way so that you can avoid Gary, I'm always hungry, I need more pipeline. And, you'll say, well, I hit my pipe goals for the previous 2 quarters. Like what's going on?
Yeah, for sure. Just before we move on to the next question, I don't want to leave Cassandra hanging. Are you still working with Yako? Are you still working with Winning by Design? What's going on there?
So a couple of things. I'm not working with Winning by Design, right? I follow a lot of their content. I stay in close touch with just some of the expert leaders in their space. People like Sherry Johnston, who started Women in Revenue and also leads their ABM practice. Maybe I should another caveat or disclosure, right? Is that I'm also not currently a Breadcrumbs, customer. I'm arguably a prospect, but a lot of what you guys do speaks to my heart because I did it the hard way, right? And it was only a lot of work for one motion. And so, I'm not here as a customer, but I see the value and the merit of what you guys are doing, and I think it's the right things to do. So,
well, I appreciate the compliments and the kudos. Full disclosure, we're going to try as hard as we can to make Kenny and Sidesnick a customer. And I think there's a natural fit there just because our worldviews are so aligned. And that leads to my next question, which, you made some comments about pipeline coverage. You were talking about the massive swings in 7 to 20x coverage. And I've prided myself my entire career of becoming like myself and the sales leader tied at the hip. We're partners. It's all about one's success is dependent on the other's success. But pipeline coverage is always an argument, right? Like, what's the right number? How much do you actually need? And I think it comes down to a fundamental quality versus quantity conversation, right? So what's your view on this, right? Like, is there a balance between quality and quantity?
Yes, there is. Every time I've seen us loosen the floodgates and allow more volume leads go in, we see basically our conversion rates drop.
Right.
As an example, I think just in the last 10 years, it was about quantity. Companies chose they took a decision to say, look, open the floodgates, everyone's biting, so just start trawling the ocean, right?
Right.
Gas is cheap, right? Trawl the oceans, just get whatever you can and scoop it in. And I see now it has to be about quality. Every tech company is talking about the rule of 40, right? Or the rule of 50, and saying like, look, we've got to keep growing, or we've got to grow into our previous valuations, but we're going to cut back staff. We're cutting back budgets, right? How do you
Yeah.
do that with quantity? Do you really want to go to the back of a van and buy a bunch of names in a parking lot and dump them into your database? Or do you really want to try to earn your customers, sharpen your ICPs, align with your sales and SDR teams, and just work as one? That's
Yeah.
hard, but I don't see what other choice people have. Like unless you're like a Snowflake or a Databricks, and no offense to the marketing leaders there, because I'm sure they're great, but there's a lot of companies that are struggling right now, right? So
Oh, tons. Yeah. I sit on a lot of sales calls, obviously for breadcrumbs. I hear the stories. And I think, you alluded to something that might seem a little kind of esoteric, this idea of interest rates, but it's true. Money was cheap for a long, long time, right? Money was cheap for a long, long time. VCs were throwing money willy nilly. Valuations went crazy. You could afford to be inefficient and still grow, and those growth numbers were great. And they helped drive the next crazy valuation number. And I think now what we're seeing is a shift back to fundamentals, and like people care about total cost of sale now.
yeah,
People are looking at fully loaded CAC and actually doing the math right.
right,
You know what I mean? Not excluding stuff to make the number look good.
yeah,
People care about cost to serve, right? So, winning hundreds of customers at a low price point, that might not be the right decision. It might be great on the growth side, but your business is actually going to bleed on the servicing side, right?
right.
So I think it is a return to fundamentals,
Yeah.
and quality is going to become more and more important.
Yeah, I think it's what I call the, if people here like doing CrossFit or going to the gym or exercising, like a lot of people were doing, or a lot of companies were doing dirty bulking. They were over consuming to try to get big really fast. And
Yeah,
then when the competition came in and they had to like slim down, it's really hard to do that. I
for
think this
sure.
is why PE companies are having degrees of a field day, is that they're coming in going, all right, we can get, distressed companies for a good deal. And now we have to start, really trimming down. And, look, I was part of the company, just Lithium. They had a similar story where, they were growing not quite fast enough. PE comes in and then they start, just getting you lean and mean.
Right.
And it's hard, like it's a big cultural change, right? And so you have to know
Entirely.
all of your dials and all of your instrumentation, which is why that slide that I showed, the three pillars of like really knowing your business and knowing all
Yeah.
the mechanics and working across the aisle. Like I think the biggest challenge when I've done this is you figure out when you're asking these questions, everything from why do you want to know, right? All the way to like, here's the data, how can we help you, right?
Yeah.
And it's just it's a lot of it's culture. So
Yeah, for sure. A couple minutes left. I want to get back to that "what do you want to know" comment in a second. It actually ties to so everybody knows Kenny and I had a conversation yesterday where I was trying to convince him how great breadcrumbs is, and an interesting topic came up in that conversation that I think everybody might be interested in hearing. But Cassandra did have another question. She said, as you begin to evaluate your pipeline complexion, what are you focused on initially?
So when I look at pipeline complexion, I look at basically average deals, so like number of deals, average deal size, and win rates, and how that changes over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the information I start looking at, because that helps me understand, oh, is the pipeline that I create today, when will that bear fruit, right? So I'm trying to understand, like, what does that look like? And then also average deal size. Oh, wow. Are we, and excuse my terminology, if there's any animal lovers, like, are we whale hunting? Are we dolphin hunting? Or are we, tuna or mackerel hunting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the average deal size? How are we getting there? Those are the things that I look at in terms of the pipeline, and really it's tied to the business, because then that tells me, am I doing the right things? And I'll just give you one example. Company I joined, we had 6 to 12 month sales cycle, 6-figure average deal size, right? But we were a lot of our marketing was single channel, right? Heavy on advertising, right? Because it was drive more inbound, get more web demo requests, right?
Yeah.
And I always say okay, like in an era of abundance, in harvesting mode, right? There's a lot of fish out there that we can slice off, but in an era of scarcity, like how do you predict that?
Right. Yeah.
And putting more money into advertising, blindly doesn't really work, especially and you ask yourself hey, product marketing, tell me about the customer. Do they get romanticized and enthralled after seeing an ad or like a white paper, and then they want to call you, right? Is that how it really works? And that's part of the whole integration and understanding all these different marketing functions to bring it together into a motion.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Last question. And kind of apropos, given that Seismic is an enablement company, so the organization probably has a philosophy on this. But when we were talking yesterday, Kenny, we were talking about how much the sales need to know about what's happening on the marketing side, what's happening at a lead or an account level in order for them to actually be effective at what they're doing. And I think that's just a layer down from this conversation that you were having about getting the organization aligned, selling in, the vision. And I think we live in a world of over communication to a certain extent. I think people, I think companies spend a lot of time sitting around making sure everybody in the organization knows what everybody else in the organization is doing. And that hampers people actually doing the thing because they're so busy talking about the thing, right? And sometimes you don't need to know, right? In my opinion, I think there's what you need to know, and then what you would like to know, and then sometimes there's things you shouldn't know, right? What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I thought about that question a lot, afterwards when you had asked, and the default answer that every marketer has is it depends, right? And what I've seen is, and here's what I've seen is that if you give too much information, the seller gets lost in all of the details, right? I'd rolled out account-based marketing at demand-based, for example, and we were trying to, we'd work with the sales teams on I rolled out account-based marketing at Twitter. We used demand-based, and we were trying to figure out, well, what information do you want? To what level, right? Does that person, does it have to be a known contact, or could it be an anonymous, pixel that you make an inference of who you think that company it might be? And, it was a journey over time. At first, we gave everything, and they went, whoa, my Slack is going off. These people are coming to the website all the time, and I got to go to every web page, see what they're doing, contextualize it, and then have a conversation. No. Give us here's a cadence of timely information we want. And a lot of, technology platforms have, visualization views in Salesforce at the account level. So those are the things that we have to figure out over time of what is important is seeing what emails, or here's their click path journey of why they're actually someone that you should speak to, important or not. That was negotiated over time. And like you said earlier, a lot of sellers have different levels of sophistication, maturity. The best I've worked with, they don't need a lot. They're like, yep, I get it. I know the account. I know what I need to say. It's that person alone clicking on something is a signal because they know that account.
Right.
Others are who is it? I need a real name. I need a person and a phone number to call. I can't go into Sales Navigator, or I don't know where to start in the company because it's so huge.
Yeah.
And so this is why I say it depends, and it's a journey over time.
For sure.
So
I agree with that 100%. Listen, Kenny, let's connect and maybe we'll do that fireside chat. Maybe we'll do it by an actual fire, maybe bourbon in hand.
Love it.
That would be a ton of fun. For those of you listening, I don't know for a fact, but Yako from Winning by Design is often at SaaStock, which is happening in Dublin in a couple of weeks. Breadcrumbs will be there. So yeah, absolutely. I love them too. I think they're great. So if you want to run into Yako or if you want to run into us, consider SaaStock Dublin. If you're having a hard time with tickets, hit us up. We might be able to help you. Actually, we have a few extra tickets lying around. Share this with your friends if you found it interesting. And Kenny puts out a ton of fantastic content on LinkedIn. Make sure you follow him. It's /Kenny KH Lee. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So make sure to follow him on LinkedIn. I'm sure he'd be happy to hear from you. And if you're dealing with sales enablement challenges, I would check out Seismic. On that note, thank you so much, Kenny. Appreciate you being here. Looking forward to chatting again soon. And for everyone out there in the digital sphere, thanks for logging in and listening. Take care.
Take care.